be able to do that. So for those of you who are doing that today, we certainly appreciate that. And really for all of you who could be doing a lot of different stuff on Labor Day, the fact that you're with us and doing this show with us here today, I really appreciate. I think we're going to hopefully make good use of your time. I know you'll like this later on. Some of y'all were just unmercifully mocking me for my behavior on the sideline after the game on Saturday. I deserve it. I'll let you do it. Also, a lot of you having fun with me alongside that there, too, and I certainly appreciate all of that. Let's just say the moment kind of got to me a little bit post-game, and so we will give you some of that before we're done. Good stuff from John Stinchcomb. I'll talk more about Zamir White. I thought that JT Daniels' thoughts on the Georgia offense. Daniels is becoming such an effective spokesman for this program and has been that way now for a while. I thought he had strong words after the game on Saturday about the way that he felt about the game, despite the fact that offensively, not a great day, and maybe specifically even for Daniels himself, but his words after this game were incredibly strong and very well spoken, so we'll give you that. But to start today, my attempt to put into historic context exactly how well Georgia played defensively, and a reminder to a lot of folks about why this might be the version of Georgia that you see a lot more this season, and that is not good for a few folks. The folks who still have to play Georgia, the folks who have kind of always somewhat sarcastically said, what happens to all these 5 stars once they got to Georgia? Well, last Saturday night, you kind of found out what happens to a lot of these 5 stars once they get to Georgia. So we got a lot to cover with all of this. It is a Labor Day edition of DawgNation Daily, the daily podcast for Georgia Bulldogs fans. We are ready to go on all the other platforms. Well, there's nothing left to do it but to do it then. DawgNation Daily, the daily podcast for Georgia Bulldogs fans, presented by Pella Window and Door of Georgia. And it begins right now.
Today's episode of DawgNation Daily is brought to you by Pella Window and Door of Georgia, viewed to be the best.
Presented by DawgNation.com, this is DawgNation Daily, the daily podcast for Georgia Bulldogs fans. Here's your host, Brandon Adams.
Not a good day to be a UGA hater, I can tell you that much. Dogs standing tall in Charlotte over the weekend, getting a win against Clemson. Y'all, I am so excited to talk about all of this with you. What a day it was. Honestly, first of all, let me start with this. Huge thanks to everybody who made DawgNation Invasion so much fun on Saturday. I'm talking about the people on our side who were doing the hard work on that, but also the bosses who even let us do something fun like that on a game day, and all of you who came out. Yeah, great shot, by the way, of everything that went down. That's the early stages of that tailgate there on Saturday. You better believe that thing got cranked up in a big way before game time. The barbecue, man, the smoke coming off that grill was so much fun to smell and enjoy, and enjoy the great food there. Appreciate Sweet Lou's helping put us all together for that. Of course, the Finish Long drink and the Classic City Lager and a lot of our great beverage partners. Man, that was flowing. Everybody's having a good time with that. It was just a great time all the way around, and really the start to what turned out to be a terrific day for DawgNation, terrific day for everybody lucky enough to be in the stadium there, getting ready for Georgia Clemson. It was just a blast all the way around. I loved every minute of it. It was an unforgettable day from beginning to end all the way around. Just an incredibly great time, and obviously the game itself, the result, is what really makes that true. And boy, look at that! For those watching video, look at that smoke coming off that barbecue grill there as the brisket and the pork being finished off. Man, that was so much fun. Such a great time all the way around. And look, there are a lot of people out there. I mentioned the Georgia haters a moment ago. There are a lot of Georgia haters out there who are like, what happens to all these 5 stars once they get to UGA? If Georgia recruits all this talent, but what does it do with that talent? What happens to all these 5 stars? And I say this all the time, and it's important to remember this. This has remained true, and Saturday, the proof of this was really put on full display. When people say, what happens to all these 5 stars once they get to Georgia? One of the things I tell people all the time is, well, you should know that a lot of those 5 stars are still at Georgia. And a lot of those 5 stars are waiting their turn and have been waiting their turn for a chance to be on the field and dominate. I joked about this on Twitter last night. You see Jermaine Johnson, who I've got great respect for as a player. I mean, he may be the best defensive player in the ACC, the way he was getting after Notre Dame quarterback Jack Cohn last night. And when you think about Jermaine Johnson doing what he did at Florida State last night, what the other guys at the outside linebacker spot did for UGA against Clemson, you're left to assume, well, I guess a guy like Azeez Ojulari, who went on to be a very high draft pick and, a guy that was obviously leading the Georgia defense a year ago. I guess he must have been pretty good to be starting over these guys and having the success he had for Georgia a year ago. And as Kirby Smart has said, now Aziz is gone, and now it's somebody else's turn. Former five-star Nolan Smith sacked a quarterback. Former five-star Trayvon Walker, who is a defensive end, but Kirby Smart said will statistically fill some of the void left behind by Ojulari, he sacks a quarterback. Former five-star Nakobe Dean sacks a couple of quarterbacks. He sacked the same quarterback a couple of times, I should say. Jordan Davis, not a five-star, but by this point in time, he essentially is one because he's a future first-round pick, and obviously the Georgia coaching staff made it very clear. They had him identified as a big, key guy for Georgia all the way along. He gets a couple of sacks of quarterbacks. All in all, Georgia sacked the quarterback 7 times on Saturday. It's the most any quarterback has been sacked by Clemson, or against Clemson in the Dabo Swinney era. That is how dominant the Georgia defensive performance was on Saturday. No quarterback who's played for Dabo Swinney since Swinney's been the coach of the Tigers has been sacked as much as DJ Uiagalelei was on Saturday night. And that is going to be a problem. Because a lot of folks kind of from like 10,000 feet away, if you watch this game on Saturday, but you didn't really watch it close, I think there's a temptation to say, oh, this is the Georgia we've seen before. Really good on defense, not very much on offense. And over the course of the week, we'll obviously get into the offensive stuff and kind of where Georgia needs to go on that side of the ball. I promise you we'll do a lot of that. But you got to stay on this defense for a long time here today, because if you think this is what the Georgia defense has been, you are not paying close enough attention. Georgia, statistically speaking, has been good defensively. But what you saw on Saturday wasn't a good defense. What you saw on Saturday was a defense that's essentially playing offense. I mean, think about this for a moment. What's the job of an offense in just basic, simple terms? It's to move the football down the field. Well, guess what the Georgia defense was doing on Saturday with all of its tackles for loss and sacks and all the havoc kind of plays it was producing? Forget the fact that it also had a defensive score. Just think about all the sack yardage accumulated over the course of the game. That's the Georgia defense moving the football in the direction Georgia fans wanted to go there as well. That is a defense so aggressive that it's actually playing offense. That's a defense so aggressive that it's a threat to score on defense in every game here this year. That's what's being produced. And it's being produced by the mindset of Dan Lanning, and I've said it a million times, that Georgia keeping Dan Lanning this offseason. I think that Kansas always wanted a current head coach to take over its job there because of what a mess that program was in. So I don't really know how close Lanning came to taking the Kansas job, but I do know that he, had a real chance to go be Texas's defensive coordinator and work with Steve Sarkisian, and Georgia money whipped the Longhorns and kept Lanning in place here. And we said at the time that was a big deal for Georgia, because the thing that I like about Lanning, even in a year like 2020, where statistically Georgia wasn't nearly as good defensively, and certainly in big games as we're used to Georgia being, but there was a mindset that evolved for Georgia last year. And we said this a lot throughout the year in 2020, that Georgia was becoming more of a pass rush mindset type team. Go back and watch. You can go to the DawgNation YouTube page. You can see this for yourself. Go back and watch the press conference that Lanning gave at the start of summer practices, where it was kind of his, kind of state of the defense type press conference for the season that was on the way. Go back and listen to everything that Lanning says in that press conference. We said this at the time. The words that Lanning used are just dripping with havoc rate, sack, tackle for loss. These are words that Lanning is using over and over again. That is what matters to him. He doesn't want Georgia just to be, hey, bend but don't break, or let's be gap sound. And I always say that in a sarcastic way. I totally understand that football fundamentals matter. I understand that. But Lanning wants to be more than that, my eyes tell me. Lanning wants to be more than just 11 defenders standing in the right spot, and 11 defenders keeping contained, and 11 defenders keeping the football in front of them. Lanning wants to break things. Lanning wants to send linebackers on a mission to go after quarterbacks, and it's fun to watch. I mean, when you see the impactful way that all these guys were playing for Georgia on Saturday, it's transfixing. I mean, you can't take your eyes on all of these elite athletes like missiles shooting after a quarterback. And if you're the Clemson side on this, it's miserable. And yes, we knew going into the game that Clemson had its issues offensively, on the offensive line in particular. We knew that. This is also a team, we told you this before, that in the 7 times Clemson had lost prior to this since 2015, the team that beat them on average had scored 40 points to do so. The idea that Georgia totally neutralized a Clemson offense that has a tendency to really score big in big games. This is not like a Georgia defensive performance we've seen before. And after the game was over with, Kirby Smart really provided some interesting insight from his own perspective about what he saw from his team defensively on Saturday. This is Kirby Smart from his post-game press conference.
Well, I knew we'd be pretty good, and we're pretty deep. I'm proud of them. It just seems like we're more athletic up there than we've been in the past. There's a lot of speed on the field. I mean, when we do plays against the scout team and Trevon and Adam are chasing plays down, I mean, they're fast and they can run. And Dan did a great job calling the game tonight. Defensive staff did an incredible job with the game plan. The kids were into the game. And, I think we frustrated them and confused them. And once we didn't do real well offensively either, but we did have some moments where we could run the ball. They struggled to do that.
Smart's point on the end about running the ball when Georgia needed to is important. We'll get to that in a moment. But think about Smart in his own words there. Frustrating and confusing Clemson, obviously that's true. But it's really the beginning of that statement that means the most to me. This is a defense more athletic than Kirby Smart has had, I would say by a wide margin, and shockingly elite athletes has been the hallmark of Georgia defensively under Kirby Smart. But this is an entirely different level. It's just simply guys who've been waiting in the wings. And none of these guys have been playing as much as they want. You think if you bumped into just going to think out loud here for a moment. You think if you bumped into Nolan Smith on the sidewalk the last couple of years, hey, Nolan, are you playing as much as you want to? No, I'm not, but my time is coming. Bump into Adam Anderson on the sidewalk anytime over the last couple of years. Hey, Adam, you playing as much as you want to at Georgia right now? No, I'm not, but I believe my time is coming. Trayvon Walker, are you getting a chance to rush the passer as much as you want to? No, I'm doing what they're asking me to do right now, but I'm going to pin my ears back one of these days. I mean, if you would have bumped into these guys, it's just easy to imagine. They didn't tell me that, but it's easy to imagine that they might would have said something like that over the course of the last couple of years. Well, that time is now. Nakobe Dean, hey, people say you could be the next Roquan Smith. Well, I'm going to learn this system for a while, but when I get to be a junior, the same way that Roquan did back in 2017, I'm going to go out there and see if I can be Roquan. Well, on Saturday, did he look that much different than Roquan looked playing in 2017? All these young guys who were once young are not quite so young anymore. All these former 5 stars are now ready for their moment at Georgia. And I thought those 5 stars looked like 5 stars all across the board. You better believe Clemson knows their name right now. And, I know I have a tendency to get somewhat hyperbolic sometimes, and maybe I exaggerate a little bit. There are also plenty of people who are watching right now who are older than me and just have better, longer memories of Georgia football than I do. But when has Georgia ever played better defensively than it played on Saturday? I was looking at some of the stats. I mean, I guess you have to go back to 2017, the SEC championship game against Auburn, to find a moment in which Georgia held a top 5 opponent to fewer than 10 points. And I'd say, just given the track record that Clemson has offensively, what this was on Saturday is a far different creation than holding that Auburn team to that point total, because I don't think offensively that Auburn team is quite what I think of Clemson as the last couple of years. Georgia came within an eyelash of shutting out Clemson. No one's done that since the Dogs did it on the road back in 2003. It's a long time. I think somebody said that Clemson hasn't scored this few points since 2010, I believe that I saw. That's as good as it gets. And I think you're left to say this is the kind of thing for Georgia that's going to travel. This is a little bit of a movable feast, the kind of havoc-wreaking front seven that goes after whatever quarterback they're playing. And as some of you also kind of predicted, hey, maybe the front seven's so good, you don't have to worry about whatever issues you may have at secondary. And think about that. I mean, there were a couple of pass interferences and, at least one moment in which, a Clemson receiver kind of got free and maybe beat a Georgia defensive back. But how much did you even really think about the Georgia secondary on Saturday? We talked about that for weeks on end, about cornerback and who's ready and who's what and who's this and who's that. I mean, in terms of being concerned, the secondary was almost a non-factor for Georgia on Saturday, and just simply because of how dominant the front seven was. This was entertaining football, man. This was entertaining, and it's not the same kind of defense that Georgia's played before. It was a far, far different, aggressive, athletic, and, oh boy, it is a unit that I can't wait to watch a lot more from as the season goes on. My name is Brandon Adams, and this is DawgNation Daily, the daily podcast for Georgia Bulldogs fans, presented today by Pella Window and Door of Georgia, and glad to have you with us no matter how You get to us today live on video, 10 a.m., Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch. We're on the radio at noon, typically on Athens Sports Radio 960. The Rev will be back again on Tuesday after the holiday there today. Obviously, podcast, the Apple Player, Spotify, the Google Player, worldfamousDawgNation.com, however you get to us. Just really appreciate you being with us here today. We might can bring that music down just a tiny little bit there. Just appreciate you being here and being a part of the program here today. Of course, John Stinchcomb coming up in just a moment. We'll talk to John about everything happening around UGA football. For that, let me remind you, our show today brought to you by our friends at Pella Window and Door of Georgia. You know, they can help equip your house with energy-efficient windows and doors. And that matters, right? Because when you're talking about hot weather, and we've had some, obviously September, typically speaking, pretty hot month here around the state of Georgia. But with that hot weather rolling in and continuing to be here, you want to keep that hot weather on the outside and that cool air conditioning that's flowing throughout your house. You want to keep that on the inside. That's what good energy-efficient windows and doors give you a chance to do. Also, Pella, nationally known brand, which gives them really unparalleled resources. Locally owned branch right here at Georgia, which gives you kind of the family feel, unparalleled service that you get when it comes to something like that. That's all of what Pella Window and Door of Georgia can provide for you. Also great savings as well. Through September 16th, you can replace all your windows with payments as low as $99 a month, or you can get 10% off all qualifying installations. So check that out. It's PellaofGA.com/DawgNation. That's the website, PellaofGA.com/DawgNation. Or if you'd prefer a call, how about 678-638-1496? 678-638-1496. That's the phone number. Whether you're reaching out via phone or via the website, just let them know BA from DawgNation Daily promised you that they would take good care of it, because I truly believe they will do that, because I've heard the stories of the way in which they've been taking care of so many folks for such a long time out there in our DawgNation Daily audience, and so we certainly appreciate that. As I mentioned a moment ago, we'll get John Stinchcomb, and obviously we got to get serious with John on one thing. The Tate Ratledge news is out there. Ratledge obviously left the game early with injury. DawgNation has reported here over the course of the last 24 hours that Ratledge now expected to miss the rest of the season, and so kind of where you go from there becomes a pretty big talking point. So we'll do a lot of that with John Stinchcomb. But before that, let me go around the doghouse here today, assisted by our friends at AAA. And I want to talk about the Georgia offense just briefly. There's something specific I want to say. I mean, look, obviously I expected more offense from Georgia. I thought Georgia would need more offense to win the game. I certainly made that clear a lot last week. So from that standpoint, I'm happy to be wrong on that. And we got plenty more days in the rest of this week and over the course of the rest of the season to figure out how Georgia does improve itself offensively. There is plenty of time to figure all that out as you kind of roll through the rest of this year on all of that. But as far as Saturday goes specifically, I thought that JT Daniels' words after the game, when he was asked, are there mixed emotions on your part? Because, yes, it was a Georgia win, but offensively your team didn't quite play as well as you wanted to. I thought Daniels' perspective on this was 100% true. That was very valuable. I think it means something to hear your quarterback say this, and Daniels once again re-ups himself as a very effective spokesman for this team. Let me let you hear the Georgia quarterback on how the offense factored into the story on Saturday. Here's JT postgame.
Not one bit. We just beat Clemson. Our D-line played amazing. Our whole defense played amazing. I think our O-line fought at the end when we had to go 4 minutes and run the ball. I think we did a lot of good things offensively, just not enough consistently to where you're going to put up points against Clemson. And I'd say the other thing that I'd say for the offense is we got to be a little more explosive, which is tough to do with what Clemson did today. They played a very conservative, soft zone, dropped 8 a lot. They did a lot of things they haven't shown to do too much. And I think they did a great job. Clemson did executing that scheme and making us, take what's there. We got to do that a little bit better. But in terms of, do I have a half and half feeling? Hell no. We just beat Clemson. I'm happy.
Yeah, and I feel the same way, JT, and I'm someone who truly believes that Georgia has to be more explosive offensively to win a national championship, but I also believe in this particular moment it just doesn't matter very much. What matters today was Georgia doing what it had to do against a team like Clemson, because when you play a team like that, it's been the playoff every year since 2015, and it's the kind of team that Georgia specifically has kind of had trouble with in the past. All of a sudden, it's a no apologies necessary type game if you win. I think that JT Daniels is 100% right about that. Plus, there's also this. Georgia did offensively what it needed to do when it absolutely had to. We heard Kirby Smart a moment ago say Clemson couldn't run the ball at all. Georgia at least ran it a little bit when it needed to. And I hear high school coaches say this a lot because I talk to a lot of high school coaches. that let's hold off. We're not quite ready for that. Let's hold off on him just for 1 second. I hear high school coaches say this a little bit from time to time that, hey, we want to be able to throw when we want to, not when we have to. We know there are moments in the game sometimes when you kind of have to throw. We kind of get that you sometimes sort of have to do that. But there are also moments in a game when you have to run. And when you're talking about 4 minutes, 44 seconds to go in the game, Georgia's in a moment right there where any team in the country views that as a moment when you got to run the ball. That's a moment when you have to be able to do that. And Georgia was able to. Georgia was able to get those tough, hard yards right there. They ran the ball. They got it done. And after the game, Kirby Smart talked specifically about the fact that, hey, when they really needed to, they were able to salt the game away on the back of Zamir White, the Georgia running game. Kirby Smart mentioned that post-game.
When our offense had to convert, when our offense had to force the ball down somebody's throat, a pretty good defense, they were able to do it. And that makes me proud. But we certainly have a long way to go to be explosive and get where we need to go offensively.
Yeah, so listen, I don't think you should overlook the fact that on a day that it wasn't pretty offensively, Georgia was willing to kind of grind out some ugly yards there late to be able to get that win, and I want to make sure we highlight this for a moment. I loved Zamir White post-game on all of this. On Instagram, great caption. Zamir's a guy that hadn't said 2 words since he's been at Georgia, but drops like the ultimate Instagram caption as a way of celebrating this win, and I thought this was really good. You see a terrific photo of Zeus shared on Instagram, essentially just running right over a Clemson defender and just leaving him in the dirt there. Zeus saying, if I wanted to play with kids, I'd have some of my own. Those are strong words there from Zamir White. And when you do what he did late in the game to help earn this one for Georgia on Saturday, that is certainly an appropriate way to kind of punctuate all of that. Really, really good stuff from Zamir White on the way to a Georgia victory on Saturday. And interesting words from both JT Daniels and Kirby Smart there on that topic. It's Around the Doghouse. It's assisted today by our friends at AAA. And, of course, make sure you check out AAA. You think about them for legendary roadside assistance, as a lot of you are traveling this weekend. That's certainly something that you can think about AAA for when you're on the road. If something goes wrong, you want to make sure you got AAA right there on speed dial to help you on the side of the road if that certainly comes up. But also AAA is the one to know for auto insurance there too. When you switch and save with AAA, you can save on average $529. That's big savings when it comes to AAA. You can check them out today. It's AAA.com/auto insurance. You can find out more about that. AAA.com/auto insurance. All right, before we're done here today on DawgNation Daily, presented by Pella Window and Door of Georgia, very interesting look. Some of you had a good time with me. Post-game on Saturday. Probably had a little excitement running through my veins and my blood after a big Georgia win right before our DawgNation post-game show began. I didn't think anybody was watching. Apparently someone was, and so we'll share some of that and some of your reaction to all of that here on our program. We'll also look at the rest of a very busy weekend around college football in the SEC. LSU coach Ed Orgeron trolled unmercifully by the team that also beat him on Saturday. So we'll talk about that. A lot more to do with you, but for now, the Tate Ratledge injury, the huge Georgia win, and where the Dogs go from here. Let's get it all with our buddy John Stinchcomb as a part of a Classic City Lager Insider Update. Good to have all of you with us in the program today there, too.
From Athens and across the SEC or wherever the recruiting trail may lead, here's a DawgNation.com insider.
There is a lot of fun stuff to talk about with John Stinchcomb here today, but also there's a little bit of business you got to take care of here too. And I guess, John, if you don't mind, before we get into the happy moments of a Georgia win against Clemson, let's also take care of some serious stuff with the injury to Tate Ratledge. Certainly in Ratledge's case, this was an off season of really positive updates about Ratledge. Seemingly anytime you got a chance to hear from somebody who had heard from somebody, rumor mill, ear to the ground type stuff, Ratledge had just really earned a lot of praise during the offseason. Seemed to be solidly in the mix for playing time going back to G-Day, and that didn't change at all once those summer practices began. It is a cruel fate to have an injury happen so quick into the first game of a season that that Tate Ratledge was looking forward to. Tough for him, but also a lot of curiosity among Georgia fans about how the season-long response to all this is going to go. What did you see from the Georgia offensive line once Ratledge went out on Saturday, and kind of what are your big picture thoughts on all of this?
Well, first, your heart goes out to Tate just because all the work he put in and had earned the opportunity to be one of the five. And to see that end so quickly and abruptly, your heart goes out to him. And for this offensive line group, it's been a point of highlighted throughout this entire offseason. What's it going to look like, and who are our guys going to be? And when you lose a player like Tate, it hurts. I think you saw that a little bit in the game. Obviously, talented players filled the role, and Warren Erickson, who is limited in a good piece of training camp with his own injury, stepped in admirably and filled that role in a way that you would hope a program at the level of Georgia could fill. But when you lost Tate, and I don't know if it's subsequent to his injury or just credit to Venables and for Clemson's defensive coordinator, but there was a number of MAs or missed assignments or mental errors that you saw from our front line that, it's week one, you'll be able to clean those up. But it appeared there were times where this offensive group up front, they weren't on the same page. And, you're so grateful you come away with a win and still able to learn from those experiences. It's much better than it costing you a game. But, it hurts. You lose one of those five, and you're going to feel it.
Yeah, I mean, I talked to people who kind of coached against Ratledge in high school and things like that. Like, the one thing you pretty commonly heard is, hey, this guy tried to fight our whole team and, things like that. Like, he's just one of those guys, and I say this with all compliments. He's one of those guys that just plays the game with a little bit of a nasty streak. And so, think about a game like Clemson where he's not as experienced as maybe sometimes Georgia offensive linemen are in a spot like that, but what he lacks in experience, he just makes up for in the willingness to just go out there and just, get in the mud with you, right? I mean, he's just very, very willing to do that. And so, there's going to be a little bit of maybe a drop-off from a mentality standpoint when he's not in the game. But I guess I remain fairly optimistic that Georgia, whether it be Erickson or however things kind of evolve as the season goes along, I do feel fairly optimistic that while I was really looking forward to seeing Tate play for a full season here, that Georgia seems well set up to absorb this. And I want to make light of it because, obviously, you got to count all of these injuries cumulatively. But it seems like Georgia's still set up okay to weather this. Do you kind of feel the same way on that?
Yes, and then let's start with Cedric Van Pran Granger, who came in the game, first start for him, and I thought he played really well. It wasn't a perfect game, nor should it be expected to be. But aside from one high snap that JT managed very well, snapping wasn't an issue, which it has been for Georgia in the past. There's years where you could almost expect one lost snap a game, it seemed like, and that wasn't the case on Saturday. So great job for him for stepping in and playing the way he did. And, the other guy you probably need to highlight is Jamari Salyer, who continues to impress. I mean, his level of play is exceptional, and I think throughout this season will garner more and more attention on a national scale because you saw it against Clemson and arguably one of the better defensive fronts in college football, that he was more than up to the occasion and the challenge. And I think this is a group that's only going to grow. I'll say this, I've never seen a bigger number 83. That was Xavier Truss's number when he comes in the game at tight end. I mean, that guy, that's a big old man. So I think you saw some experience and some opportunities you saw Truss on the field at a different position. Broderick Jones, same thing, came in at tight end a few times throughout the game. So there are options there, and I think it's going to play out for the next few weeks as to how Georgia decides to deploy the weapons they have up front and try to get that chemistry and get everyone on the same page. Because, what I think I saw on Saturday was definitely not a lack of talent. It was more of just being on the same page. And I think that comes with reps more than anything. So getting guys out there and working together and understanding the system that you're in and how you're going to pick up the different blitzes and dogs, pressures, and line games. That just takes working with one another for an extended period of time, which, luckily for Georgia, you've got a week full of practice and an opponent that doesn't pose the same threat that Clemson does.
So you and I are close to the same age, so we have similar, perspective on all of this. And I mean this question, simple question, but I mean it seriously and literally. Have you ever seen Georgia play better defensively in a big game than it played on Saturday?
No, absolutely not. I mean, you talk about rising to the occasion for the entire 4 quarters. When was there a let-up, and at what level? I mean, there's things you're going to clean up, but you talk about a complete performance by a defense. I mean, dominance by the box, the front four, the linebackers. I mean, they played at a level that was unmatched on Saturday, and I think Coach Lanning deserves a lot of credit. You talk about putting guys in the right position to make plays. I was watching Aaron Murray's breakdown of the Christopher Smith interception, and that's players understanding the scheme they're in and making a play, but you start with the scheme they're in. I think Lanning showed a front that was a little bit confusing and not the norm, and put his players in a position to make plays. And that's one example of so many. You watch late in the game the blitzing linebackers in the interior of Clemson's line where they had no answer for it. The number of stunts that the defensive line was executing at a high level. I mean, first off, you got incredible amounts of talent across that group, but they were deployed in a way that Clemson was left reeling the entire game.
I think that's exactly right. And I've said this before that, for me, much the same way sometimes people say how the Georgia offense is too conservative. John, I think there's actually been a little bit of a criticism of the Georgia defense a couple of times over the last couple of years that at times was a little bit too conservative. Even statistically strong defenses like the one that Georgia had, like, say, 2018, 2019. And let's use 2018 as for instance here. Georgia only had 24 sacks all season in 2018. Now, that was a good defense, and they were they were holding, teams to low point totals for the most part. But that's just 24 sacks for an entire season. Georgia had 7 alone against a Clemson team that's been in the playoff every year since 2015. John, to me, this is a Georgia defensive mindset that's totally evolved. It's a level of talent, even though that talent is like the number one thing you have used, number one word you probably would have used as a descriptor for the Georgia defense the last few years. I think from a talent standpoint, what Georgia deployed on Saturday is an entirely different animal all the way around. And Dan Lanning seems so willing to unleash all of that. I mean, in such aggressive ways, it's really fun to watch. This isn't just a stingy defense that's trying to limit other offenses' opportunities. This is an aggressive defense that is seeking out its chance to make the play that might actually win the game for Georgia. I think it's an entirely different species of defense than anything that Georgia's played up to this point in time under Kirby Smart, even though those defenses had a lot of very good hallmarks of their own. This, to me, has the makings of something completely different.
Well, allow me to venture into a sport that I know a very limited amount about, and that's baseball. And for a pitcher, if you've got one great pitch and that's all you throw, you're going to make some good plays. You're going to get the strikeouts, but against really good opponents, they've figured it out. You have to have more than one pitch in your bag, in your arsenal. And I think what Georgia showed against Clemson on Saturday is a willingness to bring the dogs, bring the pressures in conjunction with just coverage and outmatching folks with personnel, which, you go back to the 2 or 3 years, what was it, 2018 that you referenced, that was an elite defense, but it was also very conservative in the calls. It was, we have better personnel than you, and we're challenging you to make plays against, I hate to use the word vanilla, but certainly not a complicated scheme that relies on a variety of blitzes, dogs, and pressures. And on Saturday, I think you saw a conjunction of not only coverage, which, we caught Clemson looking for the pressures at times, and we're sitting back in coverage, and there was no receiver to get open, and we've got the horses up front that finally can get to the quarterback without bringing the pressure, but also a willingness from Coach Lanning to bring those pressures and put the heat on and force those early throws and those hot route situations, and having the back end understand what most likely you're going to see when you bring this type of pressure. I thought it was as cohesive a defensive performance from the front end all the way through the secondary, and just a willingness from Coach Lanning to mix it up and throw a variety of punches as any game that we've seen in recent history from Georgia.
You brought up Christopher Smith a moment ago. I want to ask you more about him in a moment. Let me first remind folks, this is our Classic City Lager Insider Update with John Stinchcomb. And boy, had a DawgNation invasion this past weekend. So many folks enjoying that Classic City Lager. It just pairs great with the tailgate. The weather was actually really beautiful on Saturday. It was a little bit hot, but it was actually a very nice early September day. And when you're outside on a day like that, the kind of crisp flavor that comes with Classic City Lager is great, but the lager-style lighter beer is also really good too. And it was just fun to see folks enjoying that there at the tailgate. I know a lot of you, wherever you were tailgating this past weekend, watching at home possibly, I know a lot of you were enjoying Classic City Lager from Creature Comforts Brewing Company also. It's available in 6 and 12-pack cans. Really, wherever you do your shopping, you can pick yourself up some Classic City Lager. We actually had a chance to be at the brewery a few weeks ago and actually got to see Classic City Lager being made, much the same way you're watching this being done on the video right now. That was a really cool thing to be able to see, and I'm glad that so many of you are enjoying that. It's just good, cold beer. I'm a simple guy. I like simple things. Classic City Lager is kind of the thing that I kind of like. Just well-made quality, good flavor, but nothing too fussy, nothing too fancy. It's just good, cold beer. It's Classic City Lager, so check out some today when it comes to Creature Comforts Brewing Company. So, John, I told this story in our post-game show on Saturday, and I'll tell it to you now. When Christopher Smith was still a recruit, when he had, let it be known that he was coming to Georgia, but, kind of before he started his Georgia career, we had a chance to interview him, and I really enjoyed that. He's super guy. But I do remember kind of thinking, interviewing him, this is a small guy. This is a smaller guy than obviously a lot of the guys that Georgia recruits. How is he really going to fit in at UGA? I have to admit that in my mind, I was kind of thinking that a little bit. And then I got a chance to interview him again a few weeks later, just as kind of luck would have it. And this is over the course of a couple of months or so. And before he had started his Georgia career, he'd already kind of started to put on weight, added some muscle definition. You kind of tell, even through the clothes that he was wearing, that he was just in better physical condition than he'd been just a couple of months prior to that. And that's like basically the day he was enrolling at Georgia at the time. I remember thinking, so he's already getting a head start on this. This is how serious that he's taking his college career, that he's even willing to do this on his own, because it's not as easy to get the nutrition that you need to truly add muscle mass when you're not getting fed those perfectly designed meals at Georgia the way these college players get once they get on campus. But Christopher was already kind of doing some of that. I saw this with my own eyes before he started his career there at Georgia. And I don't know. It seems like he also probably had a little bit of a chip on his shoulder, too, about guys like me that on first spec was like, maybe this guy's too small to make it at a place like UGA. I mean, the point I'm getting to here is, as a Georgia fan, I'm happy that anybody gets a pick six, interception return for a touchdown. But when it's a guy like Christopher Smith, who has worked very hard to beat the spot that he is right now, and learned a lot when he stepped in last year in kind of an emergency role once Richard LeCounte went down with injury, that just adds to the story there to me too. It was a very much a feel-good moment for me to see Smith factor in the win as much as he did on Saturday. And you like a good story as much as anybody, so I'm guessing maybe you felt the same way.
I love it. It makes me think of other guys that have, probably don't come in with those 5-star athletic abilities or traits. I mean, Christopher Smith, look at it on paper, and he doesn't match up with some of these other players that Georgia recruits and will play against and all those things. But tell that to his heart. Tell that to his effort and his drive, and the fact that the guy is talented. I mean, He just doesn't have the measurables that it demands to be a 5-star high school recruit. But there are so many guys that are the backbone and heartbeat of programs that maybe they're not, the prototype. We used to play the Raiders, and they always had the all-bus team. If they hop off the bus, it's impressive. You know what I mean? Like, it's the longest yard where they're playing the prison league team, and they come off the bus and they're intimidating. But you get them on a football field, and they're not always the best players. And when I talk to guys as you train them, yes, I'd prefer for you to have the 5-star physical attributes, but I want you to have the mindset of a 2 or 3-star guy, because they're usually the ones that are the most hungry and most willing to work and recognize that they probably need to compete. And when you combine those things, that mentality, that dog, that hunger and strive to be as great as you possibly can be, you combine that with talent like Christopher Smith has, I think that's what you see in development. And probably wasn't ready in year one, but by this point in his collegiate career, he's had that mentality of I'm willing to work. I'm focused on what it's going to take for me to be a real playmaker at this level and in this league. And you're seeing the fruits of it come Saturday.
I'll finish with this. How much did you enjoy seeing George on a day that was not great offensively? We'll certainly admit that, and we'll probably break down some more of that as the days go on here. But how much, as a former offensive lineman, did you enjoy seeing, Zamir White kind of, put it on his shoulders on Saturday late in this game and salt away that clock and really, hold on to that lead for Georgia when they really needed to, really ran the ball effectively in those key moments when everybody in the stadium knew they were going to. They got the tough, hard yards they had to do to win that football game there. That was satisfying for me, even on a day in which the rest of the offensive story was probably not quite what I either thought it would be or certainly hoped it would be.
Yeah, it's going to take more from Georgia's offense than what we saw on Saturday. Everybody can agree to that. We will be in games where our defense isn't quite as suffocating, and the offense is going to be challenged to score more than a single-digit total at the end of the game. But there were flashes. I like to see the fact that, Zeus, I thought he demonstrated some of the best vision I've seen from him. He's always been a really hard runner, but his patience and recognition of where the lanes were as good, especially late in the game, is what I've seen from him. And combine that with Kendall Milton and the runs that he had, which, he seems explosive and willing to lower his shoulder at times, but also has that gear to shift into. I think there's reason for optimism, and we need it. You're not going to be able to win a lot of games scoring just 3 points on offense, but there were points that were very encouraging. I like the decision-making process from JT. It didn't seem like he was forcing the ball constantly through the game, which, you get in one of those big marquee games, and it kind of baits itself, especially late in the game where you're starting to feel that pressure mount, and offensively we haven't been able to find the success that you want, and all of a sudden you're forcing it, and you put yourselves and your team in a bad situation. So I thought that showed a great deal of maturity from him, but obviously a great amount of room for improvement across the board. But we came into the season knowing that these running backs were a strength for this offense, and they were going to be leaned on at times, and we saw them salt away a game against a very good defensive front in Clemson, which bodes well in the future for this team.
John, incredible conversation. Thanks for your insight on Georgia football. Certainly hope you enjoy your Labor Day holiday. We appreciate you taking some time away from your family to be with us, talk about this fun Georgia win, and we'll look forward to doing it with you again very soon there too. Dogs off to a good start, and certainly curious to see how it all plays out for the home opener against UAB on Saturday. So we'll enjoy the chance to chat again very soon.
Well, it was a great day to be a Dog, and I'm just glad that we're off on the right foot, and seems to be a very promising 2021 for all Georgia fans out there. So great to be a Bulldog.
That is for sure, John. Thanks for your time.
Let's take a look around the rest of the league. This is SEC Through.
Really, really good stuff with John Stinchcomb there. Really appreciate everything he had to say. And listen, it does matter to me that John played in big games, did big stuff. By the way, a lot of you also love the story. I should have mentioned this to John. Loved the story that he told last week about his own win against Clemson in 2002. I know a lot of you had a good time with all of that. So, valuable insight from guys like that, and our buddy Terrence Edwards, who will join us later on this week, and just to get a chance to lean on guys like that is always one of the fun things about DawgNation. Great to be able to do that. By the way, speaking of DawgNation, I know a lot of you already know about this, but I want to make sure the rest of you do there as well. Huge event coming up at Truist Park when it comes to the Atlanta Braves here on Thursday, September the 30th. It's going to be UGA night there at Truist Park for that. And this is one of those fun things. If you've never done this before, it's a really cool package that you can get. It includes a co-branded Braves UGA hat. So it's literally like the Braves logo's in the front, the UGA logo's on the side. For somebody like me and so many of you the same way who've kind of been Braves fans, Georgia fans the entire life, to be able to have like both logos in the same hat is really, really fun. And so that goes along with that. You get a ticket to the game there as well. Plus, there's a donation to the UGA Atlanta Chapter Scholarship Fund, which is a really cool thing. So the packages are obviously limited on this. So you got to make sure you get in and get that before they're sold out. Braves.com/tickets for more details on that. That's Braves.com/tickets. Actually, let's do this special website. Let's do Braves.com/college nights for that. Let me make sure I say this again. It's Braves.com/college nights to get in on the special UGA ticket package on that. Take advantage of that. Also, baseball note here. Remember, Braves in kind of that big fight with the Phillies in the National League East. This is a game against the Phillies there late in the season. So not only do you get a chance to support UGA by being at Truist Park that night for the Braves, but you also get a big battle between the Braves and the Phillies where it is highly likely that the National League East kind of hangs in the balance and all of that. So Braves.com/college nights to find out a lot more about that. All right, SEC through here, kind of looking back on everything from the weekend. Let me just briefly say this about last night. I was really enjoying Notre Dame and Florida State. Jermaine Johnson at the beginning of that game. Obviously, both teams kind of really going back and forth. Total honesty here, though, between doing high school football on Friday, being in Charlotte all day Saturday, the ride back yesterday, thankfully I was on the bus, so not having to drive. It was a little bit of a long weekend. When I tell you I was out on the couch last night like a light, I was sleeping like a stone. When I woke up this morning, now I eventually stumbled into the bed and went to sleep, but when I woke up this morning, I was like, I don't know who won this game. I don't know how it got won. So I was early in the morning as I was getting ready for this show, like watching ESPN, like what did happen with that Florida State and Notre Dame game from last night. So kind of a thrilling game, and it is somewhat ironic, obviously, that Florida State tribute to Bobby Bowden at Doak Campbell last night. They end up losing the game in part because of a late missed field goal in overtime. There's a weird historic symmetry involved in all of that. Obviously, at the end of the game, there's the attempt at humor by Notre Dame coach Brian Kelly that, for the most part, fell flat. Trying to harken back to a line from John McKay, the former USC coach, was asked, what did you think about your team's execution? And he deadpanned, execution, I'm in favor of it. That was something that, was funny when McKay said it. The way in which Kelly tried to say it last night didn't quite come across as quite so funny. I'm not going to cancel him over it. I think the people who get really worked up about stuff like this are just a horrible, blight on college football. I wish they'd go somewhere and find some way to be happy. But ultimately, there is a price to be paid when you try to make a joke, it ends up not being funny. And I think it sort of speaks to the Kelly personality all the way around. And I told y'all before, remember the day when Kelly let it be slipped that the defensive coordinator they just hired from Cincinnati is going to be the next head coach at Notre Dame. A lot of folks wondered, did he misspeak? Was this an accent, whatever else? And I said, typically these kinds of things from coaches aren't a misspeak. Sometimes they're kind of a, air quotes here, accidental leak. And I think the reason why Notre Dame is trying to sell a new image for its program, hey, our next coach is already on staff here, this is the guy that's going to eventually replace Brian Kelly, is because people don't like Brian Kelly very much. And Kelly does come across as a little bit smug. You don't have to be a Notre Dame hater to necessarily notice that. And when he has a failed attempt at humor and it falls flat, there are a lot of people who are going to jump on him because of that. And, it doesn't really matter. I mean, the media, being outraged over a bad joke is, fairly, irrelevant. But it's the same personality that couldn't tell a joke on TV that also goes in the living room with recruits. And Notre Dame recruits better than most programs, but does not recruit as well as the best programs. And Irish would obviously like to be better. And I think that's one of the reasons why they're already letting it slip that the next coach for the Irish may already be on staff, because I think they know they need an image evolution beyond the Brian Kelly, who's always been very self-satisfied, but not always as good at getting other people to be as satisfied with him as he seems to be with himself. Last night's win against Florida State may be an example of that. A couple other things here really quickly. We said this on Thursday and Friday, and it was borne out on Saturday. The biggest sure thing in all of sports. Obviously, sports is unpredictable, but there has never been a better guarantee than Week 1, neutral side, non-conference opponent, Alabama obliterating whoever it's playing. We said in the 8 previous years prior to 2021, Alabama in games like I just described had won by an average of 27 points. Well, lo and behold, from the word go, it seemed like on Saturday Alabama was already up 27. They go on to dominate Miami. Miami may compete in a watered-down ACC. They don't belong on the same field as Alabama. Most of us, I think, knew that, but it's still impressive to watch the precision with which it happens. And I saw somebody on Twitter saying, why would anybody play Alabama in one of these Week 1 games? Listen, I'm tired of giving the Crimson Tide credit, but begrudgingly, you got to admit, they just know how to do this thing in Week 1, man, and they really, really did that. There was an interesting moment in California on Saturday. Obviously, LSU fans traveled in gigantic numbers, took over the Rose Bowl Stadium, drank the place dry. This was the first game in Rose Bowl history they were selling beer and wine in the concession stands. And they were really feeling pretty good about themselves. In fact, before the game, you may have seen the video of LSU coach Ed Orgeron walking into the stadium, and a UCLA fan talked a little trash to him. The open mic that was filming Orgeron captured Orgeron saying, and I wish I had the audio, I'd play it for you, but he said, that's okay with you, and the guy was dressed as a UCLA fan. He said, with your sissy blue shirt on. This is Orgeron saying this to a UCLA fan. Well, obviously, UCLA goes out and gets the win against Ed Orgeron and LSU on Saturday, and they are unmerciful in their trolling of Orgeron after the fact. Let me show you the Twitter header. This is the Twitter. If you go to what a Twitter header is, if you go to the Twitter page for UCLA football, the header is the thing up at the top. That's why they call it a header. And it's a picture of a blue shirt, UCLA colors here, and it says Sissy Blue on it. It's got the Jordan Brand logo there too, and the script U is the kind of logo for UCLA. So they are mocking Orgeron's Sissy Blue comment with their own T-shirt there at UCLA. And boy, you tell you what, you talk about the media jumping in the fray when it comes to Orgeron. He has had a bunch of harsh criticism in like written columns and things like that over the course of the last couple of days. So hot water for Orgeron after a game in which his team lost on the road. When we picked the game earlier in the week, LSU was like a 4.5-point favorite. It was down to less than a field goal by the time the game kicked off. So there was a lot of energy and steam in the direction of UCLA. But even after the fact, man, ton of criticism for Orgeron coming off that. How about a quick roundup of some of the other SEC games here for a moment? Kentucky, no problem against Louisiana Monroe. We told you that might be a pretty good play at around 29 points. Some of y'all like Mike Leach, the Mississippi State coach. You can have him as far as I'm concerned. They only beat Louisiana Tech by a skinny little point and had to come back to do so. Leach is just not fit for the SEC, and I don't think there's any doubt about that. Auburn scores 60 in Mike Bobo's debut as offensive coordinator, Brian Harson's debut as head coach. The former GA, now quarterback at South Carolina, has a big day. They shut out Eastern Illinois, so Gamecocks fans feeling pretty good about that. The story coming out of Gainesville after a 21-point win against FAU was the play of Anthony Richardson. We had been telling you this a lot during the offseason, that there was a lot of chatter coming out of Gainesville that for those who wanted to fall over themselves about Emory Jones, that it wasn't even a given that Jones was the best quarterback on that roster. And I think our belief on that was, portrayed fairly well on the field for Florida on Saturday. And then finally there's this, and I don't even know how you get lower than this. East Tennessee State beat Vanderbilt 23-3. Can you imagine? I guess now Johnson City, Tennessee is known for something other than just being a line in the Old Crow Medicine Show wagon wheel song. The folks in Johnson City also can say they beat an SEC team now 23-3. Like, Vanderbilt should just give up football at this point in time. I know everybody in the SEC is mortified to even have them in the league. I don't care how fancy pants the academic side is. That is a grotesque performance. And listen, a lot of Georgia fans have reached out to me already about this. Georgia fans hate Vanderbilt right now for the way that Vanderbilt behaved at the end of last season. I totally get it. That's as bad as it gets right there. A total humiliation all the way around. And we'll make that your SEC. Oh, one more thing, actually, to mention here as well. So we actually have college football tonight. I'm going to try to stay awake for this one if I possibly can, although I make no promises. Back in Atlanta, Louisville against Ole Miss. Of course, Lane Kiffin had a breakthrough case of COVID. I don't know if he's sick or not, but he did test positive. He says 100% of his team is vaccinated. himself obviously included, but he did test positive. So tonight, Ole Miss will have to play in Atlanta against Louisville without Kiffin. We thought that Louisville was capable of keeping this close anyway. Maybe this, makes that even more so likely now. So pay attention to Ole Miss, the final SEC team to play here in Week 1 against Louisville tonight, and we'll make that your SEC through. And speaking of humiliation, which I mentioned a moment ago, I guess maybe a dose of that for me on Saturday there as well. So let me set the stage for this if I possibly can. So on Saturday after the game, I was going to go down to the field and do the post-game show. Now, a lot of you know that last year we had a great post-game show with myself and Terrence Edwards, and we were going to do the post-game show that way, but could not stream from the building on Saturday. I just was not getting a strong enough Wi-Fi, so we have a technological way that we can produce a post-game show on the site without having to stream via Wi-Fi, and so that's kind of what we did for the post-game show on Saturday. And so I thought, well, if I were to do it like this here, let me just go back down to the field to do this thing. And so that's where I go. And, listen, I'm not going to lie to you. I was happy, right? I mean, I'd wanted Georgia to beat Clemson very, very bad. And you kind of just have a thought in your mind of how this sets up for Georgia the rest of the season. The atmosphere was great. I mean, you can talk about just like the best of college football all right there at one spot. Your team gets a big win. Everybody's having a good time. You get a chance to talk about it with a bunch of Georgia fans that are going to be in a good mood and really happy. Like in that particular moment before the post-game show, life just doesn't get much better than that at that particular moment. And so, the stadium is emptying out, the game is over, but the loudspeaker there, the speaker system is still playing music, and they play Friends in Low Places by Garth Brooks, which is a fairly classic kind of karaoke-style sing-along song. You don't have to have great melody to sing that song. It's really more about how loud you sing it more so than how well you sing it. And so in the moment, it all kind of works together where I'm feeling good. I'm not imbibing or anything. I'm just sort of high on life, right? I'm hard at work here, but also feeling pretty good about it all. Easy song to sing along to. So maybe there on the sideline, for those of you on video, as captured by someone in the stands who saw me, a little dancing, a little singing, having a good time on the field in Charlotte on Saturday night. Take a look at this. So that's Davis Holt Hines who caught that, and I told him on Twitter, I said, I didn't know anybody saw that. It's one of those things like you sort of forget there are people still in the stadium, and you sort of assume that no one's looking at you anyway. But Davis Holt Hines saw that, and he had a couple people reach out to him and it's like, oh, man, you got to share more of the video. And he responded back to this. We have Davis's tweet on this, and this is one of those moments where I'm thankful that, even though ultimately I probably don't care all that much, but I am thankful that more of that wasn't seen, because like actually looking back on the night, what Davis captured on video, for those of you who are watching, that's probably the tamer version than what I was doing at one point in time. And so Davis says on Twitter, he says, I wish I had more of this video. I didn't think to do it until the end. There was definitely some moves he broke out that the world is not yet ready for. And I think that Davis is right about that. I was definitely feeling it after the game. You see Jeff Sintel there as well, helping us get the camera ready to do the show. I mean, I just feel like I'm just like right in the – like I feel like that whole stadium's there to see me at this point in time. I am just having a good time all the way around. Our buddy Mad Dog, who is very good at edits and things like that, I think he is kind of – in his mind, kind of envision me now as maybe a little bit of a Garth Brooks style persona. Can we show Mad Dog's tweet here for a second? Because certainly this is probably pretty appropriate. You see the famous 90s era microphone that Garth Brooks used to wear, my face over Garth Brooks. That's very good for Mad Dog all the way around there. And yeah, I guess for a little bit on Saturday, I probably thought I was Garth Brooks. But it was fun to get a big win. And however you celebrated, whatever song you sang to celebrate it, whatever dance moves you broke out, I hope you were having a good time on Saturday, because on the basis of that video, I certainly was. So not to be outdone by that, and I guess this is one of those days I probably should have to give myself a golden shoe for dancing around on the sideline. Our buddy Joel Sidney Kelly also dropping another terrific video. He's the one that had the great photo last week of, JT Daniels obviously brings back a lot of, memories of Tombstone for people because of the close resemblance of JT Daniels and the the great character in Tombstone, played by Val Kilmer. And so with that in mind, Joel Sidney Kelly puts together another terrific video of all of this. Really funny stuff there with Dabo Sweeney involved, Kirby Smart. I like the handlebar mustache from Kirby right there. And, of course, good stuff from JT Daniels and Joel Sidney Kelly all the way around there. So very, very good stuff. Fun times. This was one for the memory books here this weekend. Hope you enjoyed it there as well. Already thinking about Jacksonville, too. Just 54 days from now. That's our Gator Hater Countdown. We'll see you tomorrow. DawgNation Daily, presented by Pella Window and Door of Georgia. Happy Labor Day, everybody. And on video. Time now for the R.S. Andrews Cool Down. Of course, R.S. Andrews is the one you turn to for your air conditioning, heating, plumbing, and electric needs. They show up on time. They do the work that's promised for the price that's promised. I talked about keeping that cold air inside your house a little earlier in the show. Well, think about there I go again. Funny stuff there. I am glad that Davis was able to catch that on Davis Holtheim was able to catch that on Twitter. Although the dance moves probably need a little bit of work. Also, my vanity kind of kicks in at a certain point. You know, when you're shooting me from straight ahead, the way our camera is for this show, or the way the post-game show typically is, you don't catch the fact that you got a little bit of a shine there on top because I'm 6'2". You know, I stand taller than most people, or certainly a lot of people. You don't really notice the fact on the top of the head I'm not exactly working with a full head of hair there, but at least I got enough in the front that I can kind of keep it all going. So very funny stuff all the way around. And check out R.S. Andrews online at rsandrews.com for your air conditioning, heating, plumbing, and electric needs. That's really good stuff. All right, let's get a few more comments. I'll take some more at DawgNation.com, and then we'll pop on Facebook and YouTube there too. Elephant Gun says, good for BA. Yeah, listen, I was having a good time. And I'm telling you right now, that's one of those things. You do the post-game show. It didn't start till midnight. We were, didn't leave the stadium until after 1 a.m., got back to the hotel. It's like 2 a.m. You can't go to sleep at that point in time. Jeff Santel and I sat around they had like a little, like a little camp, like a little like fireplace thing set up outside. We probably sat up Saturday morning till about 3:30 in the morning. Now I was so tired. I'd slept a handful of hours in 2 days because we'd done high school football the Friday night before. But you sit there and you talk about a big win. You enjoy yourself, and you maybe had yourself a finished long drink or a something like that, and you just had a good time. It was fun all the way around. Beach 7 says our defense played that good each week. They can record a greatest hits album. Yeah, you better believe. I'll be singing Thunder Rolls. I'll be singing, whatever song you want. Rodeo, whatever you want to do at that point. I'll do a whole like greatest hits album at that point in time. Duval Dog talking about some previous comments. DJ Uyunglele saying he hit his receivers with the eyes closed, motivated the Georgia defense. I mean, I just think that Georgia was motivated by opponent, by big spot, by all that kind of stuff. And, yeah, I'm sure that Uyunglele has said a lot of things in the past, having confidence in himself. But I think for Georgia, they just wanted to show out in a big spot. If I had to guess, that's what that was all about. Alan A. says, Clemson saying we barely beat them with Kirby's best team, 7 of last 8. Nothing new for UGA to beat you. Go Dogs. Yeah, I mean, I don't know what the Clemson side's saying and all this kind of stuff, but, this is one of those where, like, there's going to be all kinds of revisionist history out there of who was saying what. I mean, I don't mind telling you what I was saying before the game. Don't mind saying it after the game. We thought that it would take more points to win this one for Georgia than it did. Clearly wrong on that. But we've also been calling for Georgia to have the aggressive, elite kind of day defensively that it had on Saturday. We did get that one right in terms of that being a big factor towards victory. And, I mean, I am the kind of person that does pay attention to the chatter a little bit. And, like, watching that game last night between Florida State and Notre Dame, you had Joe Tessitore doing play-by-play, who's a big college football fan. He's a guy that's watching the sport really closely. And, I mean, I remember him being right out there with it, the very opening of the game last night, that, hey, big story of the weekend was the Georgia defense. So, this is not one of those things where, at least to my mind, Georgia's getting no credit. I mean, I'm watching TV last night. Tessitore has no reason to bring up Georgia other than Jermaine Johnson, but he wasn't referencing Johnson at this point in time. He's got no reason to bring up Georgia in that moment unless he just wanted to. And, he called it kind of the big story of the weekend, and to have that said it that way on a telecast last night, I think gives you, a little bit of perspective about kind of how this is being treated. That, there'll be time to talk about what the offense did or didn't do, But when you play defense like that, people are going to notice, and they noticed it for sure. Over here on Facebook, we had some comments there. Jay Harwell says, I'm glad the band drowned out Herb Street on the broadcast. Yeah, I can't be too hard on Herb Street now. Herb Street is pretty pro Georgia when he speaks. Isaac Cruz says, after a big win like that, he's disappointed that Eddie doesn't have his Savage pads yet. Yeah, I'm sorry about that. Hugh Nash says, folks need to relax and remember that it's only JT's 5th game with the Dogs. Yeah, I mean, I can't even get there. Like, my mind literally won't even go there. I'm just so over the moon happy about what happened on Saturday that I just can't nitpick it all that much. I mean, it's like somebody brings you, a brand new pickup truck. It's not like you're going to look at it and say, why are the seats tan when they, could be black? You know what I'm saying? It's like I'm just not going to nitpick the way it happened. Now, if Georgia beats South Carolina by 13 points, you better believe the next day all that's going to be is what Georgia did or didn't do. There are games in which style points matter because the opponent doesn't really matter. But when the opponent matters, the style points don't really matter. And I don't think that's that complicated. How Georgia plays against an overmatched opponent is very important. But when the who Georgia plays is what matters, then the result is the only thing you got to talk about. Let's see whatever else. Chris Collins says you got to stay off toxic Twitter. I do think this is really true. Now, I'm not saying you should never go on Twitter, but let me tell you just a quick story. And this changed. I know it sounds crazy to say a moment kind of changed my life, but it really did change my work life. So I remember in 2019. Now, 2019 was a frustrating season for Georgia. I totally get that. But in 2019, I remember being in Knoxville. And here's the way that the game would typically go. Like, I'm sitting in the press box. I've got, laptop up. And while I'm watching the show, preparing for the post-game show, preparing to do some interviews, things like that, I'm also following the game on social media, right? Whether it be our forum at forum.dawgnation.com, no disrespect to those people, or the people on social media. And it is just so negative. For a game that eventually Georgia won in blowout fashion, but the entire conversation is so negative. And here's what I kind of caught myself doing. In my mind, I'm preparing to go do a negative post-game show because I'm so influenced by the tweets and the message board comments that I've been reading that it had just influenced me, right? I may be a professional member of the Coastal Elite Broadcast Media, but I'm still, capable of being influenced. And so all these Twitter posts and message board posts and things like that were really influencing me. And I'm ready to go do a post-game show that has a negative bent. And so I'm walking down the steps to get to the very bottom of the stadium. And I'm walking, through Georgia fans to get down there. And they're all like, woo, BA, like everybody's in a good mood, right? Fans in a stadium are not on social media. A lot of times the internet signal's just not strong enough to do it. They're in the stadium. They're having a good time. And they're high-fiving. And there's like, what about that win, BA? And all that kind of stuff. Then you get down there on the field, and the folks down there, they're on a great mood. They're celebrating because the score says Georgia's up big over Tennessee. And it was at that moment that I really realized that, wow, what happens on social media, you've heard this a million times, but it played out for me in such a very tangible way that what happens on social media really isn't reflective of the fan base at large. It's reflective of the fan base that congregates and spends a lot of time on social media. And admittedly, I kind of do that. Certainly, I'm, a keen observer of message boards. I mean, so I'm pretty immersed in some of that online culture of fans. But I do interact with a lot of other fans who are not really on social media that I realize that, what the message board social media conversation is, that's not the only discussion that's taking place. And I can promise you there was not a lot of nitpicking of anything on Saturday, and nor should there be. Let's see what else. Miriam Martin Corbin kind of lashes out against Twitter. I just think, look, people don't have a lot of motivation to go on Twitter and say something positive. It's one of the reasons why if you ever do say something positive, sometimes it gets a lot of interaction on Twitter because it stands out from the other stuff that exists there. But people are motivated to go to social media to post something negative because it just when they if they didn't feel strongly to the negative, they wouldn't necessarily pick up the phone and tweet. So I do think that's just it is a medium that kind of brings out the worst in people sometimes. I'm not saying this is an anti-social media screed because I'm on social media a lot and I love interacting with a lot of you on social media. I'm just saying in terms of a thermometer for how actual fans feel, it's actually not very accurate. Bubby Dean on Facebook said, social media is only good for being able to catch BA's dance moves. That is pretty good, Bubby. I like that. Steve Schaffini asked a good question. He says, when was the last time everybody posted on Yelp because their pizza was good? And I do think that's true, right? It's like people are way more motivated to post a bad review than they are a good review. I mean, I can think of a lot of times when my wife has been like, oh, this company really treated me well. I'm going to make sure I give them an online review. And unfortunately, eventually you kind of forget to. And I hate to be that way because we should reward companies that are doing good stuff. But I mean, I can just think about this where she's like, oh, this company really took good care of me, and I'm going to go post a nice online review for them. But 2 days later, you kind of forget to do it, and it just never happens. You better believe, I don't think my wife posts negative reviews, but you better believe that a lot of people, if a company treats you badly, that's the first thing they're doing is going to that online resource and banging out some screed against them. Jeremy Lloyd says, 7 sacks. I called 6 on Friday. Jeremy, you sure did. We gave you credit on the post-game show. We'll give you credit right now there, too. Joe Maley says that the defense did not give us the looks we were expecting from them. I mean, Clemson's defense is just good, right? It's like, they're out without Hunter Davis. Brian Brzee leaves for a portion of the game. They're still just good defensively. So hopefully it gets easier now, at least against the defenses. Chris Lim White says JT Daniels not being blamed. They blame the wide receiver. They didn't even drop any passes. Even the interception was a quick read, and he didn't see the guy coming out the tight end. I think it was more of the game plan. I mean, I really don't know what. Like I said, in my mind, I almost just can't even really get there right now. I didn't think that Daniels threw a good ball on the interception, the best I could tell. That was one he would definitely like to have back. There are a couple of wide receivers for Georgia that I certainly hope, are bigger contributors than they were on Saturday. But I don't know, man. I just can't go there yet. When Georgia had to, they ran the football, and that was really fun to see. And, UAB is a good defense, obviously nowhere near as good as Clemson. So maybe it's a chance against a, lesser team on Saturday to show some more offensively. And, you start thinking about South Carolina teams like that after that. Maybe that's what's kind of on the way here. But I just can't. I mean, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. We'll talk offense before the week is done. I promise you we'll examine a lot of this kind of stuff. I'm just not ready to do it yet. Somebody asked about Yole Yursal says, do you think that Eric Gilbert will be back? Somebody said, is he even going to classes? So I can't speak to his current situation, what's going on there. There's always going to be folks trying to fill the gap in the rumor mill for what people want to know about Gilbert. The only thing I have on this is we didn't ask Terrence about it last week. Terrence obviously knows Eric well. We didn't ask him last week because I don't want to beat Terrence over the head with Eric Gilbert questions every time he comes on. But we'll ask him maybe coming up this week. His thoughts on all of that. It sounds like we're still a little ways away. From this resolving itself one way or another. I guess all I can say is I'm hopeful that he plays this season, but I'm not quite sure when that's going to happen. Daniel Holt's also asking about Scott Cochran. I have heard nothing on the Cochran thing. I think for now, things are what they are. Will Muschamp isn't the official special teams coordinator, but he's in that role right now, and he's obviously contributing now as an on-field coach and probably a number of ways beyond that too. So I think it's going to be one of those things. We just don't hear much on this Cochran front one way or another for a while. I don't get the impression he's close to coming back or anything like that. Ben Green says our soon-to-be playmakers are getting valuable reps right now. And that's true. I mean, and you hope they're able to use that, right? And listen, I like seeing some of the guys that Georgia played on Saturday. But I do think, and some of y'all may disagree with this, but I do think that Georgia has an extra responsibility to get the most out of Jermaine Burton, an extra responsibility to get the most out of Marcus Resme Jackson. It's great that Georgia had some of the guys in the game that it had on Saturday, but the recruits that look like Burton and Rosemy-Jacksaint, guys who have that kind of level, that kind of rating, they want to see how similar comps to them are used. So, I mean, right now, what makes the Georgia defense so much fun is they're taking their big stars and they're using them like stars. I mean, it's like I don't need to see the stats. I just need to see the highlight reel. If the highlight reel is long enough, then I know how the game plan went. It's the same thing going to be on offense there too. Give me star players with highlight opportunities, and that's sort of all you really need to know. And, that's kind of the next step for that group over there. Chris Collins says Georgia's offense in midseason will look like a speedboat. It could be true that it's one of those things where, when some improvement happens, it does happen exponentially. That very much could happen, and it could start this Saturday there too. We'll talk about how that happens at some point in time there as well. Haven't been on YouTube yet. Let's hop over there and see the folks there. Green Soldier says, I don't understand how fans by the way, it was great to see the Green Soldier this week. We had all the stars out at DawgNation Invasion. Green Soldier was a big part of that. I don't understand how fans refuse to give another team credit. It can't be Clemson's defense is elite, one of their best against a young injured wide receiver core. UGA's offense has to be that UGA's offense was just bad. And I understand where Green Soldier's coming from on that. It sounds like maybe that's what some people are saying. I mean, Green, in defense of some other people for a moment, though, it feels like a lot of Georgia fans felt like they have been. By the way, great shot there at DawgNation Invasion. We were just kind of getting going at this point in time. But you already see the food flowing, the bar flowing, a lot of Finnish long drink, Classic City Lager. Everybody having a good time with all of that. Great giveaways, including our DawgNation Invasion T-shirt. That's fun. It's a good day. Charlotte was beautiful. Terrific look there at the Airstream trailer where all the TVs were on. That was a good time. That was good times. What the point is, back to the less fun thing of people, not always being able to be happy. It feels like you kind of been there, the offense before, and I get that. And listen, had this been a game in which Georgia wasn't as dominant as it was defensively, even if they won, maybe I'll be a little bit more worried about it too. But I just can't even get over this. This was defensively unlike anything we've ever seen before. This wasn't, hey, against a mediocre team, let's just keep the football in front of us and we'll grind out the clock and try to get out of here with a win. I mean, that Georgia defense was playing like an offense. They're trying to score. And who knows, they may outscore. I mean, I think a simple first step with the Georgia offense would be able to score more points this Saturday than the Georgia defense does. That might be a simple point. But, yeah, so I'm just over the moon happy about all of this right now. Light Dog says the running back should be 2, 6, and 3. I didn't mind some of the way in which Cook was used on Saturday. They're obviously going to throw to him. But if you're thinking about like the Holyfield Swift, Michelle, Chubb, I mean, to me, that's probably Zamir and Kendall, right? I mean, that looks like it's going to be the guys that is. Not to say there's not a role for Kenny McIntosh because I think there's one of those there too. But I take what Zamir did late in the game very seriously. And there are a couple moments for Kendall Milton where I thought, it's like in the press box I have to sit, like a sophisticated member of the coastal elite broadcast media. So I, got to sit there very, very still. But there are a couple moments when Zamir put that toe in the turf, and I was like, oh, boy, this is about to turn into something. And he was just within an eyelash of doing it. He really was, just within an eyelash. Demetri Sullivan said, I felt like y'all were overhyping the Clemson defensive line leading up, and they were good, but only one sack and only okay in the run stop. Yeah, so, Demetri, I'll give you credit for that. Your prediction certainly looks right. I mean, it is one of those things where I thought they affected JT Daniels without sacking him sometimes. But, yeah, I mean, there's no doubt that – there are a lot of people who thought that the Clemson defensive front was the star front coming into the game, and pretty clearly Georgia, looked like, that bunch on Saturday. And I also said this on Cover 4 Live, that, for all the potential first-round picks that Clemson had in his front seven, that if Georgia doesn't have just as many, then what are we doing? This entire offseason worth of discussion has been a total waste because you got to have those stars in those roles, and Georgia kind of did. G. Grace Bama Boy, no doubt feeling good after his team showing on Saturday. To Jordan Bowman, who, to his credit, shows back up in here after his team lost on Saturday. He's been good commenter all summer long, and he's back in here again today. He said it was a good learning experience for the coaches. The loss will help y'all down the road. The one thing that Clemson's got going for it, Like, I don't quite know what they have the running back spot, but even Georgia fans, you got to say that, like, Ladson and Joe Nagata are good receivers. And by the way, speaking of Ladson, like, there are a couple moments, the one in the end zone in particular, where Latavius Brini really broke up a ball intended for Ladson, which was a great play. I thought Latavius, at least to my eyes, had a good game. I'm not breaking down the film, but to my eyes, I thought Brini had a good game. But one of the reasons why I assume that Clemson's going to be just fine is because, Nagata gets open. Ladson can get open. And if there's not as much of an effective Georgia pass rush, you're probably talking about those Clemson receivers more than we did on Saturday. So my assumption is that Clemson's going to be fine. Ace Dog says, hoping to see you guys in Indy in January. Oh, my gosh, can you imagine how much fun that'll be? It'll be cold, but it'll be fun. He says, I live just a 3-hour drive from there. I got to do some homework. I do love everywhere that DawgNation goes. There are people in that area that you get a chance to meet, which I always think is really fun. And there are a lot of dog folks up there in that part of the Midwest, and I'd love nothing more than to see a bunch of them in Indianapolis before a national championship. That'd be fun. Now, listen, we can think about that because all I do is yap about this team. The players and coaches themselves going to be focused on UAB, but you better believe there was some peeking at the playoff schedule after a win like that against Clemson. Jim McLaughlin asking about Kyrus Jackson returning punts but not pass patterns. I'm guessing that is based on – and look, the honest truth is I don't know. I think it's a fair question, but there's a lot more lateral movement maybe for the wide receiver in that situation, and so he's not quite ready to do that. I do think that Kyrus was missed as a receiver for Georgia on Saturday. Andrew Hughes asked about the dog walk. So we didn't have dog walk on video Saturday, and this is kind of on me. Like, logistically, this is boring, but I'll say this really quick. It's like for these NFL stadiums, what teams have a tendency to do is drive into the stadium. College stadiums, the buses park outside the stadium. And so a lot of times you don't pick up your credential. And I know this is boring, but it's just what happened. You don't pick up your credential, at least I don't, until I'm done with my pregame duties, which take place outside the stadium. And so on a day like Saturday when the team's getting off the bus inside the stadium, I'm not in there to get a video of it. So that was a little bit frustrating for me. I do believe Saturday for the home game, though, it's back to normal, I'm thinking. And so maybe Georgia will announce this, but I'm thinking that it's back to normal with dog walk on Saturday. We'll try to let you know about that, but it'll be a little easier to get that video come Saturday. Scott Green says, I believe Kirby and the staff outcoached Clemson. I think that's probably right. I do think that Georgia had an effective game plan. I mean, you can say they didn't do anything offensively, but look at all the things they tried. Look at all the times they threw to Brock Bowers. That's creative. Look at the ways in which they tried to get James Cook involved. That's creative. It didn't work, at least to big numbers, but it was creative. Commenter says this wasn't like the Dogs were being destroyed and we won by a fluke play. They dominated Clemson. That's true. Nothing but high anticipation for the following games. Greatest defensive points I've ever seen. All of that's true, 100%. Thomas Tyson says Kirby coached circles around Dabo. Totally agree with that. That was a very good day for him. Worm, he's harder on James Cook than I would be. I'm not even quite sure where that's coming from. I think that's unfair to Cook. Let's see what else. A commenter also mentions the Bowers kid. Yeah, I mean, like Brock Bowers has some real potential for Georgia, and the fact that he was targeted as much as he was ought to be an indication of that. Let's see what else. Let me go back over to Facebook for a moment. Over here on Facebook, Chris Garcia says that Dabo cries too much. I haven't rewatched the game yet, but I have heard a lot of people saying that Dabo he was not liking seeing his quarterback getting beat up the way they did on Saturday. Ooh, you love to think about that. Gerald Ryman says, I wonder what Kirby's game plan is against UAB. I mean, here's the thing I've been saying about UAB, and sometimes I'm right, sometimes I'm wrong, but I try to stay consistent, is that people have a tendency to lump every non-Power 5, non-conference opponent into the same category, and they treat all these teams as if they're all Charleston Southern. But like UAB is a team that could win Conference USA this year. I think did they win the conference a year ago? They've been to a bowl like 4 years in a row. Georgia, at least the line that I saw yesterday, had Dogs favored by 29. That's actually a little bit more than I probably thought they would be favored in this game. I thought it'd be closer to like 21-24. So the line's a little bit bigger than I thought it would be. This team's good. When you consider there's 130 teams in Division I football, UAB is better than a lot of them, and they're probably better than a couple of SEC teams. I guarantee you this: UAB wouldn't lose to East Tennessee State 23-3. I promise you that much. So, you do have to have a little bit of a game plan against UAB on Saturday, and it's a big step down in conversation from what Clemson is. But I'm gonna be UAB may be better than South Carolina. I'll say that much. Bill Sanders says SVP did quite well at center. Yeah, we said this on our 1st and 15 to start the day today, that people have a tendency to say, like, next man up. Sometimes I think that's a little trite. Sometimes I think that overstates the ease of the situation. I don't think that Georgia viewed SVP as necessarily next man up. They thought he had a chance, but they weren't going to start him at center just because it was his turn. It's not like Little League left field. It wasn't Van Prawn's turn. He's going to have to earn it. And had he not earned it, they would have very quickly and easily started Jamari Salyer at center. They didn't want to. You don't. When you think you've got center solidified, you want to put Salyer somewhere else. But if they had to start Salyer at center, I believe they would have. And Cedric Van Prawn, over the course of a series of practices, over the course of a month of August, earned the trust of Matt Luke, Kirby Smart, to the point where he could go out and do that job. And I think that, the best I can tell, he played pretty well. So, I think that's a credit to him that he wasn't given the job. He had to take it, and he did take it. And, Erickson's, got the issue with his snapping hand right now. I think that Warren Erickson's a valuable player to Georgia while he can't snap at guard. When Erickson can snap again, maybe Van Prawn moves to guard for a little while. There's some options available to Georgia. Oh, yeah, Raymond Fosway brings this up. How about Georgia Tech spends $1 million to bring in Northern Illinois? Northern Illinois jumps out to a 14-point lead, holds on to get the win. That's the worst money Tech has spent since Paul Hewitt's contract extension. What a disastrous day for the Yellow Jackets. And, Jeff Collins, man, I just don't know. I thought Collins would be doing better at Tech than he's doing. What a disaster that is. Disaster. Joey Robbins says the game was great. Offense will only get better as players continue to get healthy, and the defense, we all saw how they showed out. Totally true. Good to see Kathy Aquavia Green. I feel like we hadn't seen Kathy in a while. I'm glad she's here today. Chris Garcia says ABC's broadcast was terrible and the band made it worse. Sorry to hear that. Jason Hildreth said Erickson did a good job at guard, but we usually have a bigger body guy at guard help push the run. Yeah, so, I think one of the things that, Georgia's just making a transition offensively, right? The big bodied guys that that Sam Pittman had a couple of years ago, it seems like Georgia's looking to do something a little different than that now. So we'll see if the offense can grow around that. Let's see what else. Calvin Sanders says Georgia's going to be suiting up the trainers by the second half against Tech. Well, listen, if South Carolina's going to start a graduate assistant at quarterback, there's no telling what Georgia – they may pull somebody out of the stands by the time they play Tech. John William Adams says CBS is not doing SEC this week either. Yeah, in the past, CBS hasn't started the SEC games until 3-4 weeks in, and y'all got to get used to it. Coming up a couple of years, CBS is not going to be doing these games at all anymore. Bobby Melnick says, watch this game with some high school coaches and former UGA players. Let me get the rest of this. He says, consensus was it was very hard for a running back to get into a groove rhythm when he's rotating 4. That's an interesting point. He says, you think we should continue rotating 4 or find the 2 workhorses? So I believe it's hard to have 4 running backs who are of equal value. That the odds are, just in any group situation like that, a couple of guys are going to prove themselves to be more valuable than the others. Now, going into Saturday, had that happened yet, you can make a case that it hasn't. But I've said before, with no disrespect to McIntosh and no disrespect to James Cook, who I think that should be used in a variety of ways. And by the way, I'm not quite so sure you can't use McIntosh in some of the same ways you might use James Cook. But I believe if you're looking to pare down that rotation a little bit, it's Zamir White and Kendall Milton who I want to see get more of the carries, I believe. Ed Pollock says, awesome night in Charlotte, best experience since the Rose Bowl. I don't think that's overstating things. It was really fun. Kathy says she works too much these days. Well, listen, I hope you're not working today. I hope you get a day off, Kathy, but I'm glad you're here today nonetheless. Jamie Huff says if the wide receivers block better, we score more. Yeah, there was at least one, that I can think of right now where Jermaine Burton really had a chance to help spring a play on a block and, didn't quite do that. So that at least one situation I can think of where that was certainly the case. Richard Sheffield says, I can live with no more Gary Danielson. I understand a lot of folks don't like Danielson, but I think that CBS, by and large, does a better job televising the SEC than ESPN does. Hugh Nash says, have to keep Milton in there more and keep him going. Yeah, I think that Milton and White would be my two guys there. Gerald Harmon says, I'm thinking that Kirby might hold Kyrus Jackson, play ground and pound against UAB. I mean, I think they're going to definitely take it easy with him. It was interesting before the game. There was a lot of chatter in the press box on the basis of Dominic Blaylock was really doing a lot during warm-ups, like a lot. And I don't know that anybody necessarily thought he was going to play, but it definitely earned a lot of attention that Blaylock was running as hard as he was and doing as many things as he was doing. Part of me wondered, is this just Kirby playing games with Clemson? Give him something else to think about right before the start of the game or something like that. But he was doing a lot. So, last week Kirby kind of said, hey, he's maybe healthier sooner or something like that. Maybe he is. Steve Highland on the Brian Kelly joke. Yeah, I can't get scandalized by a joke, but watch a guy tell a joke tells you a lot about the guy. Like, Brian Kelly is not a good dude. Like, you can just sort of tell. He is just not a good dude. And you can say, well, that's unfair because I don't know him. I'm more than happy to say that. But he does not come across as a good dude. I'm not scandalized by a bad joke. I mean, at least there's some bad jokes that be scandalous. I'm not scandalized by this particular bad joke, but it's just obvious that when a guy is this bad at telling a joke, you can just tell Brian Kelly doesn't have a single friend. If you just want to know the honest truth of my opinion, it is obvious that Kelly does not have a friend in his life because he is so poorly practiced in the art of telling a joke that it's obvious that he doesn't have a lot of people to bounce those kinds of things off of. Joe Melee on the subject of Milton compared to Zeus. I mean, listen, I thought what Zeus did at the end of this game was really important for Georgia. Matt Rugavina says Kirby's now beaten Lincoln Riley, Dabo, Jimbo, Brian Kelly twice, Mullen 3 times. Yeah, the trophies on the wall in terms of the coaches that everybody seems to fall in love with for Kirby's starting to get pretty good, and beating Dabo was a very important thing in that. I think this was a very important win for Georgia on Saturday. Randy Hall does mention some good blocks by Justin Robinson. I did see a couple of those there as well, for sure. All right, it's late. We got to go. Let me do a few more on all the platforms, and then we're going to get ready to get out of here. Chase Smith said Milton and White both literally knocked Clemson defenders out of the game. They really did. The Zeus run near the end when he lowers the shoulder, that was old school, man. And that one that everybody has passed around on video of Kendall Milton, boom, he really popped, and that young man had to step out of the game. Hope he's doing well, but that was a big pop there for sure. David West reminding us that the win against Clemson came on the birthday of the legendary former UGA coach Vince Dooley. And that was a happy birthday present for Coach Dooley. Back on YouTube here for a moment. Richard D says, what were my favorite songs being played in the stadium as the win was impending? So in the press box, which is where I was when the game concluded, you really can't hear the PA all that well, like the loudspeaker music, because you got the glass window. So I didn't even really notice the music until I was on the field right there. And like, I wouldn't say I'm like the world's biggest Garth Brooks fan, but just like in that moment, it all just kind of falls into place for you. Possum One also mentioning Channing Tindall. Yeah, you got to give Tindall some credit. The moment, I forget exactly when in the game it happened, the one-on-one tackle he made against Will Shipley, you'll talk about a play. Channing Tindall, man, he is good. He is very good. Scott Harris asked about other injuries. Kirby will talk here coming out in about 20 minutes. It'll probably be on the DawgNation YouTube page by 1 p.m. at the latest. Kirby will give an update on that there. Green Soldier also asking about Burton and Bowers, Jackson, Rosemead, Washington all together in the field. That's a good combination to think about, Green Soldier. I hope that's sooner rather than later. Thomas Tyson says Channing Tindall has such good closing speed. Sure does. Allison Lane says, BA, you haven't mentioned Jake Camarda yet. Yeah, I saw Jake's family before the game on Saturday. They were obviously excited. You know, it's hard to believe how fast these college careers go by. And it seems like just yesterday, Camarda was still in high school, and now he's at this stage of his career there at UGA. But in a first half, especially when points were really at a premium and field position was very, very important, some of those Camarda kicks, man, they were boomers. They were just boomers. And I'd give anything, the way that if I could get a pitching wedge, just sort of die the way that some of Camarda's punts were inside the 10-yard line like that. It was great to see. Great to see. Joe Ford asked about the DawgNation shirts. Yeah, so we used to have some of these. We haven't printed an extra run of these in a while. But, Joe, I would certainly love to be able to provide some of these. I'm not sure when we'll do that again, but I appreciate the fact that you would want one. That means a lot to me. Leslie Waller asked about Ron Corson's condition after testing positive for coronavirus, and I have not heard about that. That's a good question. Green Soldier on Lewis Seen. Yeah, Seen is another one of these guys that just brings the physicality. Worm. I haven't seen that interview from Kirby Smart where he dropped the either you're elite or you're not, but I've seen a lot of people talking about it. I've got to go try to find and watch that. That comment's getting a lot of attention. Andrew Hughes says that the players that attempted to tackle Kendall Milton, okay. Yeah, you kind of wonder about that because they really came up worse for the wear on that. Nature Gator with some compliments to Brock Bowers. Appreciate you saying that. Foster Moss, good point. He says the sack prediction that Azeez Ojulari made doesn't sound so unrealistic now. No, it does not. It does not indeed. Very good point. Robert Barnes said he watched the replay yesterday, got fired up again. It's a lot of fun to be able to do. Leslie bringing up Ron Corson. Yeah, I have not heard of how Mr. Corson's condition is, but I'll certainly hope we hear something on that pretty soon. Back to DawgNation.com, then we're going to get ready to go. Yeah, Chris, I've heard a lot of people bring this up. So, the thing with the game, they call it like natural sound, something like nat sound. They have these things called I think they're called like parabola microphones, like the big clear plate looking things on the sideline. Those pick up sound from in the stadium, and apparently the Clemson band was mic'd way too loud. I've heard a lot of people say that the audio mix in the game was horrendous. The Clemson band was way too loud. I've heard a lot of people saying that. Randy Glass says, wonder what recruits thought about the game. I know Jeff's got something coming with a pretty big recruit here coming up pretty soon. As far as some of the offensive guys, I'm not quite so sure. Did hear, excuse me, there was a little bit of drama about who was going to sit where on Saturday. Would you sit in the Georgia section? Would you sit in the Clemson section? There are a couple of pretty big names that did choose to sit in the Georgia section. I believe one of those was Justice Haynes. I believe I'm right about that. So I heard some good stuff on that front. Philip Thomas, thank you for the kind words about the post-game show. Yeah, we had a really good time. Really good time. Randy Glass, looking ahead to those big threats now, mentions Florida. Let's watch Auburn on the road in a couple of weeks at Penn State, LSU game. I mean, I know Penn State won against Wisconsin on Saturday, and I don't think that Auburn's going to be very good, but there's at least some chance that Auburn is undefeated when it hosts Georgia in a few weeks. I know that's getting way ahead of yourself, but if you're going to look ahead to the Florida game, at least keep in mind that there are a couple of scenarios that could play out for Georgia-Auburn in just a few weeks, where it's either first-year coach really struggling for the Tigers, or there's a chance that undefeated, couple of decent wins, and Jordan-Hare Stadium actually feels like a pretty big environment that day. So at least be wary of that. At least be wary of that. All right, we have got to go because it's Labor Day. Folks want to go home. All right, Miriam Martin Corbin, I would love to have seen you this weekend there too. Denithian Henderson says the Junkyard Dogs are back. That's a great comment to close things out because they really are. The legendary coach, Irk Russell, would have loved that. Other day we were over at Midtown High School at Henderson Stadium. That's the stadium where Russell was once a high school coach back at what was then known as Grady High School. It's where he got his start as a coach. So I was thinking about Russell a lot the other day because we were at the stadium where he coached so much in his early days, and he would have loved like crazy. He would have loved it like crazy to see what Georgia was doing on Saturday for sure. All right. Philip Carroll also mentioned Kentucky. I think Kentucky, Missouri Shows you what like a dork I am. Like, I'm really excited for Kentucky, Missouri on Saturday. Very excited about that game. I think there's a lot to be learned about that one for sure. All right, big thanks to R.S. Sanders making the R.S. Sanders Cool Down possible. I had a chance to see Dari Payro, his lovely wife, and some good friends this weekend. It was so much fun to be with them for DawgNation Invasion. We have a big party. You know, Dari's going to have a whole crew there, and that's always true. And it was a great time for all of that on Saturday. And obviously, Dari making sure your parties go well, too, because electrical issues or plumbing issues, that can really mess things up. Well, don't let it. Air conditioning unit, if it's on its last legs, get it tuned back up to factory fresh specs. Find R.S. Sanders online at rsanders.com. Or water heater, if it goes out, in any case, R.S. Sanders can replace it for you the same day. So find them online at rsanders.com. Have a great day. We'll see you back here tomorrow. DawgNation Daily, presented by Pella Window and Door. Also, check out the AJC online, ajc.com. I mentioned Braves pennant race against Philadelphia after a weekend in Colorado. How are things going on that front? Falcons getting ready for their season opener coming up. The rest of the world in college football. College football in Atlanta tonight with Ole Miss and Louisville. Wall-to-wall coverage of that online, ajc.com, for more of our friends at the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. You have a great day. See you back here tomorrow at 10 a.m. for DawgNation Daily, and I guess one more of me on the way out the door here. Having a good time. Hope you had as much fun on Saturday night as I did. And we'll see you tomorrow for DawgNation Daily, presented by Pella Window and Door.